In the timeless expanse of Eden, a garden of unparalleled beauty, crafted by the hand of God, Eve came into being, formed from the rib of Adam to be his companion in a world untouched by sorrow or sin. The garden stretched endlessly in every direction, a vibrant tapestry of emerald meadows dotted with flowers in every hue imaginable: scarlet poppies, golden marigolds, and delicate white lilies that swayed gently in the warm breeze. Crystal clear rivers wound their way through the landscape, their waters sparkling under the golden sunlight, their surfaces rippling with the gentle movements of fish that shimmered like living jewels. Ancient trees towered overhead, their branches heavy with fruit pomegranates that glowed like rubies, figs bursting with sweetness, and clusters of grapes that hung low, their skins glistening with dew. The air was alive with the hum of creation, filled with the sweet scent of jasmine and the earthy aroma of moss, while birds with feathers of sapphire and amber flitted between the trees, their songs weaving a symphony that echoed through the garden. Lions roamed peacefully alongside lambs, their manes glinting in the sunlight. Their roars softened into contented purrs, and rabbits darted through the grass, their movements a playful dance with the butterflies that fluttered around them. Eve opened her eyes for the first time in this paradise, her vision filled with the radiant colors of Eden, her senses overwhelmed by the beauty that surrounded her. Her body was a masterpiece of creation, her skin smooth and glowing with a golden warmth that seemed to capture the light of the sun, her long dark hair cascading down her back in waves that shimmered like polished obsidian, catching the sunlight in strands of gold and bronze. She stood tall and graceful, her form draped in a delicate mantle of leaves woven by the garden itself, their green edges soft against her skin, their patterns intricate and shimmering with the dew that clung to them. Her dark brown eyes, wide with wonder, took in every detail of her new world, their depths reflecting the vibrant hues of the flowers and the endless blue of the sky above. She felt the warmth of the earth beneath her bare feet, the grass soft and cool against her soles, each step a gentle caress as she moved through the meadow, her hands reaching out to touch the petals of a nearby flower, their velvety texture sending a thrill through her. Adam stood before her, his own creation a marvel of strength and beauty, his skin bronzed by the sun, his dark eyes filled with awe as he beheld her for the first time. His face broke into a smile, a radiant expression of joy that mirrored the light in his heart. And Eve felt an immediate connection, a bond that transcended understanding, as if they were two halves of a single whole. He reached for her hand, his touch warm and reassuring, and together they walked through the garden, their steps in perfect harmony, their laughter mingling with the songs of the birds overhead. They passed beneath the shade of a massive fig tree, its leaves casting dappled shadows on their faces, and stopped by a riverbank where the water flowed clear and cool, its surface reflecting their faces as they gazed into it, their reflections a testament to the unity they shared. Eve knelt to dip her fingers into the water, the coolness sending a shiver through her dark hair falling forward to brush the surface, creating tiny ripples that spread outward in perfect circles. The garden was a place of perfect peace, its every element a reflection of God's love, and Eve felt that love in every breath she took, her heart swelling with gratitude for the Creator who had brought her into being. She and Adam explored their new home with a childlike wonder, their hands brushing against the bark of ancient trees, their feet sinking into the soft earth as they ran through the meadows, their laughter echoing through the garden. They tasted the fruits of Eden, their juices sweet and refreshing, the flavors bursting on their tongues as they shared a pomegranate, its ruby seeds staining their fingers, their smiles mirroring the joy they found in each other. In the cool of the day, they felt the presence of God walking among them, His light filling the garden with a warmth that wrapped around them like a gentle embrace, His nearness a source of comfort and awe that deepened their connection to Him and to each other. Yet, amid the perfection of Eden, there stood the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, its presence a quiet reminder of the one boundary God had set. It rose in the center of the garden, its trunk gnarled and ancient, its branches heavy with fruit that shimmered like polished gems, their colors shifting in the sunlight, deep reds, vibrant golds, and soft purples that seemed to glow with an otherworldly allure. The tree's shadow stretched long across the meadow, its leaves rustling softly in the breeze, and Eve felt a flicker of curiosity as she passed by it, her dark eyes lingering on its fruit, her mind innocent but intrigued by the mystery it represented. She and Adam had been warned not to eat from it, the command a simple one in a world of abundance, and Eve trusted God's wisdom. Her heart content with the endless blessings of Eden, she turned away, her hand still clasped in Adam's, her steps light as they continued their journey through the garden, her soul pure and untainted, her life a perfect harmony of love and obedience in the paradise they called home. Eve wandered through the lush expanse of Eden alone on a radiant morning, her bare feet sinking into the soft grass, her senses alive with the garden's unending beauty. The air was warm, carrying the delicate scent of blooming jasmine and the sweetness of ripe fruit, while the distant hum of a waterfall mingled with the songs of birds flitting through the treetops, their feathers a blur of sapphire and crimson against the emerald canopy. She wore her mantle of leaves, its green edges shimmering with dew, the intricate patterns catching the sunlight as she moved, her long dark hair flowing down her back in waves that glowed with strands of gold in the morning light. Her dark brown eyes sparkled with curiosity, her hands reaching out to brush the velvety petals of a nearby flower, its scarlet hue vibrant against her golden skin, her movements graceful and unhurried as she explored the paradise that was her home. The garden seemed to breathe with life, its every element a testament to God's creation, and Eve felt a deep contentment in her heart, her soul at peace as she marveled at the world around her. Her wanderings led her to the center of the garden, where the tree of the knowledge of good and evil stood, its presence both majestic and foreboding amidst the surrounding beauty. The tree was ancient, its gnarled trunk twisting upward, its bark rough and weathered, etched with patterns that seemed to tell a story older than time itself. Its branches stretched wide, heavy with fruit that shimmered like precious gems, their surfaces reflecting the sunlight in a kaleidoscope of colors, deep reds that glowed like rubies, vibrant golds that shone like the sun, and soft purples that seemed to pulse with an inner light. The fruit hung low, within easy reach, their smooth skins glistening with a sheen that made them appear almost alive, their aroma a tantalizing blend of sweetness and mystery that filled the air around the tree. Eve stopped in her tracks, her breath catching in her throat, her dark brown eyes drawn to the forbidden fruit, their allure stirring a curiosity she had never felt before, her heart beating a little faster as she stepped closer, her fingers brushing against the leaves of a nearby bush. As Eve stood before the tree, a serpent emerged from its branches, its sinuous body coiling round the trunk with a grace that was both mesmerizing and unsettling. The serpent's scales gleamed in the sunlight, a mosaic of emerald green and molten gold, each scale catching the light in a way that made it seem to shimmer with an otherworldly beauty, its movements fluid and deliberate as it descended toward her. Its eyes were a piercing amber, their depths glinting with a cunning intelligence that Eve, in her innocence, could not fully comprehend. Their gaze fixed on her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. The serpent's head hovered near the fruit, its forked tongue flicking out to taste the air, its body undulating with a rhythm that seemed to match the beating of her heart. Its presence, a stark contrast to the peace of the garden, a shadow amidst the light. Eve felt a flicker of unease, her hands instinctively clasping together, her fingers tightening as she took a small step back, her dark brown eyes darting between the serpent and the fruit, her mind wrestling with the command she and Adam had been given. The serpent's gaze never wavered, its amber eyes boring into hers, and Eve felt a strange pull, a whisper of doubt that crept into her thoughts like a tendril of smoke, curling around her innocence and tugging at her curiosity. She had been told not to eat from this tree, the warning clear in a garden of abundance, but the fruit's beauty was undeniable. Its promise of knowledge, a temptation she had never faced before. Her heart raced, her breath coming in shallow bursts, her hands trembling slightly as she reached out, her fingers hovering just inches from the nearest fruit, its red skin glowing with a warmth that seemed to beckon her closer. The serpent moved closer still, its body curling around a low branch, its head tilting as if to study her, its eyes glinting with a knowing light that made her feel exposed, her innocence a fragile shield against the doubt it sowed. She hesitated, her hand frozen in midair, her dark brown eyes flickering with uncertainty, her mind torn between obedience and the allure of the unknown. In that moment of vulnerability, Eve's curiosity overpowered her restraint, the serpent's presence a catalyst for the choice she would make. She plucked the fruit from the tree, her fingers closing around its smooth, warm skin, the weight of it surprisingly light in her hand, its surface cool against her palm despite the heat of the day. She held it up, her dark brown eyes tracing its contours, the red hue deepening in the sunlight, its aroma intensifying as she brought it closer, the sweetness filling her senses with a promise she could no longer resist. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breath quickening as she raised the fruit to her lips, her hands trembling with the weight of her decision, her mind racing with thoughts of what might come. She bit into it, the skin breaking with a soft snap, the juice flooding her mouth with a sweetness that was both exquisite and overwhelming, its flavor bursting on her tongue like nothing she had ever tasted before. But as the sweetness faded, a heaviness settled over her, a shadow that crept into her soul, her dark brown eyes widening as she felt the first stirrings of something new, something dark and unfamiliar, that would change her world forever. Eve stood beneath the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the forbidden fruit still in her hand, its juice staining her lips, the sweetness lingering on her tongue as a wave of awareness crashed over her like a storm breaking on the shore. The garden around her, once a place of perfect harmony, seemed to shift in an instant, its vibrant colors dimming as if a veil had been drawn across the sun, the air growing heavy with a stillness that pressed against her skin, her golden skin, once radiant with the light of innocence, now felt exposed, a flush creeping up her neck as a new sensation shame gripped her heart, its unfamiliar weight making her breath come in shallow gasps. Her dark brown eyes widened, darting around the garden as if seeing it for the first time, the lush greenery now a stark contrast to the vulnerability she felt, her hands trembling as she clutched the fruit, its red skin slick with her sweat, the reality of her disobedience sinking into her soul like a stone. She dropped the fruit, its thud against the soft grass, a hollow sound that echoed in the stillness, and she stumbled backward, her bare feet catching on a root, her body trembling as she tried to comprehend the change within her. The innocence that had defined Eve was gone, replaced by a raw awareness of good and evil that flooded her mind, her thoughts racing with a clarity that was both exhilarating and terrifying, her heart pounding with a fear she had never known. She looked down at her body, her mantle of leaves suddenly inadequate, the delicate green edges that had once felt like a natural extension of the garden, now a flimsy covering that left her feeling exposed, her golden skin prickling with a newfound sensitivity to the air around her. Her hands moved instinctively, reaching for the nearest fig tree with broad, glossy leaves, and she tore at them, her fingers shaking as she plucked the leaves, their texture rough against her palms, their scent earthy and sharp as she crushed them in her haste. She wrapped them around herself, her movements frantic, her breath hitching as she tried to cover her body, the leaves sticking to her sweat-dampened skin, their edges curling as she secured them with trembling fingers. Her dark brown eyes filled with a panic that mirrored the turmoil in her soul. Eve's thoughts turned to Adam, the man who had been her companion in this perfect world, and she felt a desperate need to share what she had done, her heart torn between guilt and a strange hope that he might understand. She ran through the garden, her makeshift covering of leaves rustling with each step, her long dark hair streaming behind her, its waves catching on branches as she moved, her bare feet pounding against the soft earth, her breath coming in ragged bursts as she sought him out. She found him near a grove of olive trees, his hands deep in the soil as he planted seeds, his bronzed skin glistening with sweat, his dark eyes focused on his task, his face a picture of contentment that shattered when he looked up and saw her. Eve's hands shook as she held out another fruit she had taken from the tree, its red skin glowing in the fading light, her dark brown eyes pleading as she offered it to him, her body trembling with the weight of her choice, her heart aching with the hope that he would join her in this new reality. Adam took the fruit from her, his hands steady but his eyes searching hers, a flicker of uncertainty passing across his face as he felt the weight of the moment, the bond between them pulling him toward her despite the warning they had both received. He brought the fruit to his lips, his breath warm against its skin, and bit into it, the juice dripping down his chin as the same awareness that had overtaken Eve flooded his mind, his dark eyes widening as he felt the shift within him, his body tensing as shame washed over him like a wave. He dropped the fruit, its remnants falling to the ground, and looked at Eve. Their shared guilt, a heavy chain that bound them together. Their connection, once perfect, now fractured by the weight of their disobedience. They stood there, their bodies close, but their hearts distant, their hands reaching for more leaves to cover themselves, their movements mirrored in a frantic dance of desperation, their dark eyes meeting with a shared understanding of the consequences. They now faced the garden, once their sanctuary, became a place of hiding as Eve and Adam retreated into the shadows. Their bodies crouched low among the trees, their makeshift coverings of leaves clinging to their skin, their hands brushing against the rough bark as they sought shelter. The air grew cooler as the day waned, the golden light of Eden giving way to a softer glow, the songs of the birds fading into an eerie silence that seemed to mourn their fall. Eve's heart raced, her breath shallow as she pressed herself against the trunk of an ancient cedar, its branches low and heavy, their needles brushing against her skin, her dark brown eyes darting toward every sound, her body trembling with a fear that was as new as the shame she felt. Adam crouched beside her, his bronzed skin now pale with anxiety, his hands gripping her arm as if to anchor them both. Their shared guilt, a palpable force that drew them closer, even as it drove a wedge between them. They heard the sound of footsteps. In the garden, the familiar presence of God approaching in the cool of the evening, and Eve's heart sank, her hands tightening around Adam's, her tears falling silently as they realized there was no escape from the one who had created them. Their paradise lost in the shadow of their sin. Eve and Adam huddled in the shadows of the cedar grove, their bodies pressed against the rough bark, their makeshift coverings of fig leaves clinging to their sweat-dampened skin, their hands clasped tightly together as the presence of God approached in the fading light of Eden. The garden, once a sanctuary of peace, now felt like a labyrinth of judgment, its vibrant colors muted in the evening glow, the air heavy with a stillness that seemed to hold its breath, the distant songs of birds replaced by an eerie silence that amplified the sound of their own ragged breathing. Eve's golden skin was flushed with fear, her dark brown eyes wide and glistening with tears, her long dark hair tangled with leaves and twigs, its waves falling over her shoulders as she trembled, her heart pounding with a dread she had never known. Adam's bronzed skin was pale, his dark eyes darting toward the sound of footsteps, his hands gripping hers with a desperation that mirrored her own. Their shared guilt, a heavy burden that weighed on their souls as they awaited the consequences of their disobedience. The presence of God filled the garden with a radiant light, its brilliance piercing through the shadows where Eve and Adam hid, its warmth both comforting and terrifying, a reminder of the love they had betrayed. The light seemed to pulse with a divine authority, illuminating every corner of Eden, the flowers and trees glowing softly in its presence, their colors vivid against the encroaching dusk, the rivers reflecting the light in shimmering waves that danced across the landscape. Eve felt the light on her skin, its intensity making her flinch, her hands tightening around Adam's, her tears falling silently as she bowed her head, her dark brown eyes fixed on the ground, her body trembling with the weight of her shame. Adam pressed closer to her, his breath shallow, his hands shaking as he tried to shield her, his own fear palpable in the way he held her, their makeshift coverings of leaves rustling with their movements, their vulnerability laid bare before the Creator who had formed them God's voice, though not heard in words, resonated through the garden with a power that shook the earth, its authority undeniable, its tone a mixture of sorrow and justice that pierced Eve's heart like a blade. She felt the weight of his judgment, her hands clasping tighter, her fingers digging into Adam's skin, her tears soaking the leaves that covered her, her dark brown eyes closing as she braced herself for what was to come. The consequences of their sin were pronounced with a clarity that left no room for doubt. Eve would bear children in pain, her body now subject to the agony of childbirth, her role as a mother forever marked by the struggle she had brought upon herself. Adam would toil against a cursed earth, the ground that had once yielded its bounty freely now filled with thorns and thistles, his labor a constant reminder of their fall. The harmony of Eden was shattered, the animals that had once lived in peace now turning wary, their eyes glinting with a new instinct as they retreated into the shadows. The garden itself mourning the loss of its innocence. The most devastating consequence came with their expulsion from Eden, a decree that tore at Eve's heart as she realized they would be cast out from the only home they had ever known. She and Adam rose from their hiding place, their movements slow and heavy, their hands still clasped as they stepped out into the meadow, their bare feet sinking into the soft grass, their dark eyes taking in the beauty of the garden one last time. The rivers sparkled in the fading light, their waters whispering a farewell. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches heavy with fruit they would never taste again. The flowers bowing their heads as if in sorrow, their petals scattering on the breeze. Eve's tears fell freely, her golden skin streaked with dirt and tears, her long dark hair blowing in the wind, its waves catching on the branches as she moved, her makeshift covering of leaves clinging to her body, a fragile shield against the world they were about to enter. They walked toward the eastern gate of Eden, their steps faltering, their hands gripping each other with a desperation born of fear, their hearts breaking with each step they took away from paradise. The garden's beauty seemed to fade as they approached the boundary, the colors growing muted, the air growing cooler, the scent of jasmine replaced by the faint tints of dust from the world beyond. An angel appeared at the gate, its form towering and radiant, its wings shimmering with a light that rivaled the sun, its hands wielding a flaming sword that danced with an otherworldly fire, its presence a barrier that sealed their fate. The angel's light was blinding, its sword casting sparks that illuminated the path. The heat of the flames, a stark contrast to the coolness of the evening. The sight of it filling Eve with a mixture of awe and terror, her dark brown eyes reflecting the fire as she turned to look back at the garden one last time. Eden disappeared behind a veil of light as the angel took its place, the garden vanishing from view, its gates closed forever to the first man and woman, their paradise lost in the wake of their sin. Eve clung to Adam, her body trembling, her tears soaking his shoulder, her golden skin pale in the dim light of the world beyond, her long dark hair falling over her face as she buried it against him, her heart aching with the weight of their loss. They stepped into the wilderness, the ground beneath their feet hard and unyielding, the air filled with the scent of dust and the distant howl of a creature they did not recognize. Their hands still clasped as they faced the unknown, their souls marked by the fall that would define their legacy. Eve turned her head one final time, her dark brown eyes searching for a glimpse of the garden. But all she saw was the angel's light, a radiant barrier that separated them from the life they had known, her tears falling to the ground as they began their journey into a world of hardship and toil. Eve and Adam ventured into the harsh wilderness beyond Eden, their steps heavy with the weight of their exile, their hands clasped tightly as they faced a world that bore little resemblance to the paradise they had lost. The landscape was a stark contrast to the lush garden, its terrain a rugged expanse of rocky hills and barren plains. The earth cracked and dry under a sky that often hung heavy with gray clouds, the air filled with the scent of dust and the faint tang of distant rain that rarely came. They built a shelter from what they could find, using branches and clay to construct a crude dwelling, its walls uneven and rough, its roof a patchwork of leaves and mud that leaked during the infrequent storms, the interior dim and smoky from the small fire they kept burning to ward off the chill. Eve's golden skin, once radiant in the light of Eden, was now streaked with dirt, her hands calloused from labor, her long dark hair tangled and matted with dust, tied back with a strip of woven grass to keep it out of her face as she worked, her makeshift covering of leaves replaced by a rough tunic of animal hide, its edges frayed and stained from use. Life outside Eden was a relentless struggle, each day a battle against the cursed earth that yielded little despite their efforts, the ground hard and unyielding, its surface dotted with thorns and thistles that tore at their hands as they worked. Eve labored alongside Adam, her body bending under the weight of their new reality, her hands digging into the soil to plant seeds, her fingers bleeding from the sharp rocks that littered the ground, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she fought to coax life from the barren earth. She gathered what little they could find, wild roots, bitter herbs, and the occasional handful of berries, her hands stained with their juices, her back aching from hours spent foraging under the unrelenting sun, her dark brown eyes squinting against the harsh light, their depths reflecting the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. Adam worked nearby, his bronzed skin glistening with sweat, his hands wielding a crude tool to break the soil, his face etched with determination, his dark eyes focused on the task, their shared labor a silent testament to their partnership in this new, unforgiving world. The pain of childbirth, a consequence of their sin, became a harsh reality for Eve as she bore her first son, Cain, in the dim light of their shelter, her body racked with agony, her cries echoing through the desolate plain, the air thick with the scent of sweat and the faint tanks of blood. She lay on a mat of woven grass, her hands gripping Adam's, her golden skin pale with exhaustion, her long dark hair plastered to her forehead, her dark brown eyes clenched shut as waves of pain coursed through her, her breath coming in sharp gasps as she pushed through the torment. Adam knelt beside her, his hands steady but his face filled with worry, his dark eyes watching her with a tenderness that belied the harshness of their surroundings, his bronzed skin streaked with dirt, as he supported her through the ordeal. When Cain was born, his cries filled the shelter, a piercing sound that brought tears of relief to Eve's eyes, her hands trembling as she cradled him against her chest, her fingers brushing against his soft skin, her dark brown eyes gazing at him with a love that transcended her pain, her heart swelling with the hope that this child might bring light to their darkened world. A year later, Eve gave birth to Abel, the labor just as grueling, her body trembling with the effort, her cries mingling with the howl of the wind outside their shelter, the air heavy with the scent of rain that pattered against the roof, its rhythm a cruel counterpoint to her suffering. She held Abel close, her hands gentle despite the calluses that marked them, her long dark hair falling over her shoulder to brush against his face, her dark brown eyes softening as she looked at him, his tiny features a mirror of her own, his cries easing as she rocked him, the warmth of her body a comfort in the coldness of their new reality. She and Adam raised their sons in the shadow of their exile, teaching them to work the land, their hands guiding theirs as they planted seeds, their voices soft as they shared stories of Eden, their dark eyes reflecting a longing for the paradise they had lost, their love for their children a beacon in the darkness of their lives. But the world beyond Eden was cruel, its harshness seeping into the hearts of their sons, and Eve's fragile hope was shattered. When Cain killed Abel in a fit of jealousy, the violence, a stark reminder of the sin that had followed them from the garden. She found Abel's body in a field, his blood soaking into the earth, his face still and pale, his hands limp at his sides, the air filled with the metallic scent of blood and the faint rustle of the wind through the sparse grass. Eve fell to her knees, her hands clawing at the ground, her fingers digging into the dirt, her cries tearing through the silence, her long dark hair falling over her face as she rocked him, her tears soaking the earth, her golden skin streaked with mud and blood, her dark brown eyes filled with a grief that seemed to swallow her whole. Adam stood nearby, his bronzed skin pale with shock, his hands trembling as he reached for her, his dark eyes reflecting the same anguish that consumed her. Their shared pain, a heavy chain that bound them to the consequences of their fall. Eve buried Abel in the hard earth, her hands shaking as she covered him with soil, her tears mixing with the dirt, her body trembling with the weight of her loss, her heart aching with the realization that her choice in Eden had brought this suffering upon her family. She sat by his grave for hours, her hands resting on the mound, her long dark hair blowing in the wind, her dark brown eyes staring into the distance, her soul grappling with the guilt that now defined her, her love for her remaining son, Cain, tempered by the fear of what he had become, her hope for the future dimmed by the shadow of her past. Eve's life continued in the harsh wilderness beyond Eden, her days marked by the rhythm of survival and the enduring love she held for her family, her heart slowly healing through the birth of more children and the legacy she would leave behind. After the devastating loss of Abel, she gave birth to Seth, a son whose arrival brought a flicker of hope to her weary soul, his cries filling their crude shelter with a new kind of light. The air heavy with the scent of sweat, her golden skin, now weathered by years of toil, glowed with a quiet joy as she looked down at him, her dark brown eyes tracing his tiny features, her long dark hair falling over her shoulder to brush against his face, her hands gentle despite the calluses that marked them, her heart swelling with the promise of renewal that his name meaning appointed carried. She and Adam raised Seth with the same care they had given their other sons, their hands guiding his as they taught him to work the land, their voices soft as they shared stories of Eden, their dark eyes reflecting a longing for the paradise they had lost, their love for him a balm to the wounds of their past. Over the years, Eve bore other children, her body weakened by the repeated pains of childbirth, each labor a reminder of the curse she carried, her cries echoing through the shelter as she brought new life into the world, her golden skin pale with exhaustion, her hands gripping Adam's with a desperation born of pain, her dark brown eyes clenched shut as she endured the torment. Yet each child was a blessing, their small bodies filling the shelter with life, their laughter a melody that softened the harshness of their surroundings, the air filled with the scent of baking bread and the earthy aroma of the herbs Eve gathered to feed them. She taught her children the ways of survival, her hands showing them how to plant seeds in the stubborn earth, her fingers deft as she wove baskets from dried grass, her voice steady as she shared the knowledge she had gained through years of hardship, her long dark hair streaked with gray, tied back with a strip of hide to keep it out of her face as she worked, her dark brown eyes shining with a faith that had grown stronger with each trial. Eve also passed down the stories of their Creator, her hands gesturing as she described the beauty of Eden, her voice trembling with emotion as she spoke of God's love and the consequences of their disobedience, her dark brown eyes reflecting the firelight as her children listened, their small faces rapt with attention, their hands resting on her knees in a gesture of trust. She taught them to pray, her hands clasping theirs as they knelt on the hard ground, her voice steady despite the years of sorrow, her faith a beacon that guided them through the darkness of their world, her love for God a testament to the grace that had sustained her. She and Adam grew closer in their old age, their bodies bent with the weight of their labor, their skin wrinkled and weathered by the sun, their hands still finding each other in the dim light of their shelter, their love deepened by the shared trials they had endured, their dark eyes meeting with a quiet understanding that transcended the pain of their past. As Eve aged, her body grew frail, her golden skin now thin and marked with the scars of a life hard-lived, her long dark hair fully gray, its waves tied back with a simple cord, her hands trembling as she worked, her movements slower but still filled with purpose. She spent her final days surrounded by her children and grandchildren, their voices a chorus of life that filled the shelter, the air warm with the scent of the fire that burned steadily in the center, the walls glowing softly in its light, the woven rugs beneath her worn but soft with age. She lay on a mat, her body weakened but her spirit strong, her hands resting on her chest, her fingers tracing the edges of her rough tunic, its fabric faded and patched from years of use, her dark brown eyes gazing at her family with a love that had never wavered, her heart at peace with the life she had lived. When she took her last breath, her eyes closed, her lips curving into a faint smile, her body stilling as her soul departed, her children weeping softly as they gathered around her, their hands touching hers in a final farewell, their tears falling onto the earth she had worked so hard to tame. Eve was buried in the land she had come to know, her body laid to rest in a shallow grave, the hard earth softened by the hands of her children, the air filled with the scent of dust and the faint sweetness of wildflowers that grew nearby, their petals scattering on the breeze as they covered her with soil, their hands gentle as they smoothed the ground, their voices rising in a quiet prayer for the mother who had given them life. Her legacy lived on in her children, who became the ancestors of all humanity, their descendants spreading across the earth, their stories carrying the memory of the first woman who had walked in Eden. Her name a symbol of both the fall and the hope that followed. Eve's life, marked by the beauty of creation, the pain of disobedience, and the strength of redemption, became a testament to the fragility of human nature and the enduring power of God's mercy. Her story, a foundation for the generations that followed, her love and faith, a light that shone through the ages. Her name forever etched in the history of the world she helped to shape.